Hello and welcome to the channel. I'm Chris Lecomte, though you may have known me as referee or Mr. Official throughout the years. Today I'll be reviewing Christian Barnes in one of his first ever games as a head referee. This is the Atlantic Dragons versus Rutgers University in the fall of 2019. Now, before I get into this ref review, I just want to thank Christian Barnes for allowing me to use one of his first ever games as a head referee. It's not easy putting yourself out there, and when it comes to early games as referees, it's hard to look back on those and to allow those games to be published, even if they don't go well, right? Every referee when they first start out, including myself, has a rough time in their first couple of games. So if you're a new referee, if you're someone who's looking into reffing or looking to improve your reffing here, take note of any mistakes that happen so that you can help avoid them, and all the good things he does so that you can copy those and do those and use those in your first couple of games. For players and coaches watching, I ask that you watch this as a tool to learn how to show some compassion for new referees, right? If a referee comes on and it's one of their first ever games, show them a little compassion, cut them a little slack, as they might not be perfect, right? Their hands might not be perfect, their whistles might not be perfect, their calls might not be perfect. No one's perfect on their first time out. Give them the chance to try it out, and with the right community around them and the right feedback for them, those refs can grow and become better and better over time. And now, without further ado, let's dive in. Okay, so for this, we're going to take a look at the four cornerstones of officiating and how Christian did in each of them. So the first is consistency. How was his consistency? And for consistency, Christian earned himself a B+. And we're going to see some examples of that here. All right, when it comes to consistency, I'm going to show you a call Christian makes on brooms up here.
To endure this cold weather.
Brooms up's called, play happens, quaffles loose in the ground. This player's running away, and then this Dragons player reaches around from behind and grabs the ball. Now, according to the rulebook, you are allowed limited contact from behind on a steal. So, in this case, if you're going to call that legal, I'm okay with that. If you're going to call that an illegal wrap, I'm also okay with that. As long as you're consistent, I'm okay with either. In this case, Christian doesn't call it, so Christian is letting that go. And I'm okay with that, right? You can see if this was a foul, Christian would have whistled by now because, the fouling player would have the ball, right? Christian's going to call it. I'm okay with that. And so just to set the baseline, this is on brooms up. That's the baseline here on brooms up. Now for consistency, we have to compare at least two different points in the game. That's what we're going to do. We're going to look here at another point in the game about 11 minutes in, where this ball goes to the keeper. Now, this chaser for Rutgers is going to strip the keeper.
I think their beaters are better than.
Rip.
Oh, great strip!
So now this Rutgers player has picked the quaffle up, is trying to make a drive towards the goal.
By number 7 has an open shot of hoop.
So now the keeper, Dan Shapiro, he's got a wrap on this chaser here.
Hopefully going to get past here over against.
And now Christian is stopping play. Now, one thing Christian's doing here is he's blowing his whistle and holding his hand out like this. This means warning. In the Quidditch rulebook, this is a warning. If you're going to stop play, you put one hand straight up in the air rather than one hand straight out, right? So, Christian's going to stop play. Now, I'm not quite certain what for. Stop play. Christian does an excellent thing here where he moves this chaser back to where they're supposed to go, right? Saying, no. You don't get free movement. One thing I don't like is that he's grabbing and pulling the Rutgers player back. You can use your words and just say, move here, come here, right? I've reffed across language barriers before, and hand signals will work as well. Just come here, right? And then gives a card to this player, Dan Shapiro. Now, Dan Shapiro's been playing for a while. He's been playing for many years. So there's no reason to be explaining why you're calling it. You can tell him what the call is, right? But you don't need to explain why. Now, this goes on for some time before Christian pulls out the card. Right, Dan excellently is switching his headband already. That's great. Great way to take that initiative there. And Christian's got a yellow card of some sort, but I can't really tell what the call is, right? I can't really hear Christian, and there's no hand signal, so I don't know what's going on. All I know is that Dan's being sent to the box, and the quaffle's being given to the Rutgers player, which could be any one of a million things. Okay. So this is one point to use hand signals, but I didn't see much. So this is supposed to be a pretty strict call for whatever it is, right? If it's from behind, if it's two hands, if it's tackling a player without the ball, whatever it is, it's a pretty strict call. In addition, we back up far enough, we'll see something right here is that the tackled player is now entirely off broom, right? And then play is stopped, and then a card is being given. Again, still don't know what it's for, but it's a very strict interpretation of whatever rule that is, right? Now the issue here is that Christian was lax early on in the game at about at brooms up, and now is being relaxed here later on in the game, now is being strict here later on in the game. So if you're going to ref, you need to be consistent. Being consistently strict or consistently lax is always better than being inconsistent, right? If you're going to consistently call the letter of the law, that's not good, but it's better than, it's not great. It's good. It's okay, but it's not better than being inconsistent, being lax sometimes, strict on other times, right? You want to be consistent. Either be consistently strict or consistently lax, but you need to pick that. Especially within one game, you need to be consistent within a single game. Now, the second cornerstone is communication. Now, this was a windy game, which makes communication difficult, but the more difficult communication is, the more important it is. And so for here, communication is a C+, and we're going to see examples of that here. All right, taking a look at communication. Here we're going to see a foul that is called on a player on the Atlantic Dragons. So the keeper's being the quaffle up. He gets threatened. He starts running around the pitch. As you do, passes it over to the chaser, who passes it back. In this case, might get beat before, might not get beat before. It's really close. Christian lets the play go here. There's another example of it being lax, and this is earlier in the game. So this is, again, another example of that relaxed reffing style, which again is fine. You have to be consistently lax or consistently strict, and you still have to call the rules. You can't just call nothing. I mean, if you call nothing, you are being consistent, but you're also just wrong, and that would not go well, right? You'd lose control of the game super quickly. So anyway, back from my tangent, Quaffle's on the ground. Some scrum is going on there. Christian does good work there by blowing the whistle and putting his hands straight up in the air. That's exactly what you want to do. And then proceeds to come down to card a player on the Dragons. Now, right now, Christian is behind 1, 2, 3, 4-ish people here, right? You can't really see Christian. You can't see him back there. Right, and he's on the other side of the field, and he's going to yell in the opposite direction. So he pulls a card out. I can't even tell whether it's yellow or blue, but that's because of the angle of the card, and that's not necessarily his fault at that point. Pulls out the card, then checks the player's jersey number. I would check it first, then pull the card out and make the foul call, but that is neither necessarily here nor there. You should check the player's jersey number first. But the issue is, it's very windy. You can hear the wind. And he's making this call from behind a bunch of players, right? If you're going to make a call to the sidelines, you need to make it loud and proud, and you need to use hand signals. So what Christian should do is move out to about, maybe where this cone is, maybe out to about here. Move out in front, and then make the call from there, right? Maybe you can ask for the player's jersey number. So, jersey number, please. I tell you, it's number 7. Say, okay, great. Illegal physical contact, whatever the call is. 1 minute in the box, or until a goal, turnover, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But this call needs to be made from closer to the middle of the field. You don't have to go all the way to the midline, but closer to an open area of the field. When you're making a call, it's not just for the scorekeeper. The scorekeeper is your primary objective. That's the person you primarily want to have that information, but they're not the only people who need it. The sidelines need to know the information, and the spectators should know the information, right? As a referee, I've seen referees get threatened, get their lives threatened because of poor communication. I will stand by it every time. Poor communication is the easiest thing to be good at, and it gives you the most bang for your buck. And hand signals are really, really the base of all of it. Now, apart from hand signals, another thing refs need to use is their voice. Oftentimes, at the end of a 2-day tournament, most refs will have lost their voice. Part of that comes from poor projection techniques, right? You want to use your diaphragm. If you're a theater kid, you know how to do this. You use your diaphragm. You project a lot, really loudly. I'm not necessarily very good at it. You stay hydrated. But a lot of refs lose their voice by the end of the weekend because they're talking so much. Christian here is going to show how his voice can cut through the wind and how he can communicate some information to the players.
I heard your Velcro and I thought it was
So
snitch Velcro.
this quaffle gets thrown back to the keeper. The chaser for Rutgers knocks the quaffle back across the midline. And then listen.
Yeah, haven't
So Christian says there, please advance the quaffle, reset used. Now, I have a couple issues with this, but the best thing about this is how easy it is to hear him, right? Even through the wind, even with the ref standing in the way, you're still able to hear very clearly, please advance the quaffle, reset used. You know what call he's made, and you know what the consequences of those calls are, right? You've used a reset, and you've been given a warning for stalling and for delay of game. That's great. That's excellent. And this player knows to advance it, and you can tell because they immediately throw it, right? Excellent. That's excellent. Christian, excellent voice. The issue I have here is that the reset wasn't used and the order in which those things are said. So first, the Rutgers player number 24 is the one who knocks it across the line. So it's not a reset because the opposing team is the one who knocks it over the restrictor line. So that's not a reset, first of all. The second thing is when you say it in that order, please advance the quaffle, reset used. It implies that because they're not advancing the quaffle, that they have now used their reset, right? That's what seems to be implied here. If you want to convey that the reset's been used and that the quaffle needs to be advanced, I would flip the order, right? I would say reset used, and then I would say, please advance the quaffle, or I would actually say keeper advance the quaffle. Another thing is how long the delay is between when the reset is supposedly used, which is here, right? And then and then here, right? There's about a 5-second delay between when the reset is used, or supposedly used. It's not actually used, but I already said that. And when the call is made, right? If a reset's being used, you got to call it immediately. In addition, when you call a reset used, you got to use those hand signals. Reset used. It's hand down towards the hoops, right? Towards the hoops of that team that's using the reset. Reset used. That way the teams and everyone can see that you've called it, right? They don't have to hear you. Because Christian's yelling towards the camera, I'm going to bet that most of the sideline can't hear whatever he just said. But if he puts his arm out and says reset used, they'll all see that he's called it. And that means he's communicating now with everyone who can see him. And that is the key. That's the goal, really. All right, so this communication goes more to team and ref crew communication. But there's going to be a call an AR makes. So AR puts his hand up here. Play is stopped. So play is stopped, and then Christian has to talk to the AR, as you do. So they start their conference here, 16:32, 60 minutes 32 on the film. And then goes on for a bit. Right. So one issue is that this AR is pantomiming, right? They've got their arms out, they're pantomiming something with their side here. I don't quite know what's going on, but they're pantomiming, right? Head ref, you got to shut that down. ARs, just don't do it. Just don't pantomime. This AR is doing well by turning over the bludger already. Now Christian's going to make the card. So the call is contact from behind. Now the ref meeting starts at 16:32 and ends at 16:50, just for the ref meeting to discuss what the call is. And that's 18 seconds. So now 18 seconds might not seem like a long time, but as we just sat and watched, that's a pretty long time. If you're communicating a call like contact from behind, in this case, you don't need more than about 5 seconds to call it, and I'll demonstrate. Okay, ready? Atlantic Dragons, number 69, contact from behind. That's it. That's all it takes. Atlantic Dragons, 69, contact from behind. That's it. That's all that needs to be said. You don't need to say anything else. That's all the head ref needs to know. That's all you need to say. You don't need to say anything else. That's it. right? The only extra information the head ref might need is if it is a call that could be a blue or a yellow, is they need the severity. So if it's like playing after beat, right? That could be a blue, yellow, or red, depending on how bad it is. You need to indicate the severity, right? Is it the playing after beat blue card for for continuing play after beat? Is it the yellow card for making contact after being beat? Is it the red card for egregious foul play if there's a special circumstance or something, right? Which of those is it? Okay. That conversation can also be cut down by just simply communicating that in the first place. Just, let's say it's this player here, Dragon 69 making contact after being beat. I as the head ref already know it's a yellow card. Great. We've now saved ourselves some time. The other thing that needs to be known is if it affects the quadruple game or if it's close to a goal. So if the goal needs to be negated or if the goal negates the penalty time, or if it's a blue card, whether the quaffle needs to be turned over. In this case, it's a yellow, so the quaffle automatically gets turned over, and the bludger gets turned over to number 9. That was the bludger being affected in the play, and it already has been, which is good. But 18 seconds to discuss a simple contact from behind call is 3 times too long, at least 3 times too long, right? The head ref only needs to know 3 things as an AR, and as a head referee to limit your stoppages, set those expectations at the ref pregame meeting. All you need to know is the team, jersey number, and what they did. Set that example. Set that expectation during the ref meeting prior to the game, and make sure you enforce it during the game. If the AR starts to tell you a story about what happened, stop them and tell them, I only need to know jersey number, I only know team, jersey number, and what they did. That's all I need to know. Just shut it down. And you want the game to flow smoothly. You don't want stoppages to be a long stoppage. You want them to be a lot faster. As the head referee, you didn't see the play, so you can't really give any advice on whether something's illegal, right? The AR, you have to trust your ARs implicitly and blindly at all times. You didn't see the play, so you can't override them, right? You have to listen to what your ARs are telling you. Now, the third cornerstone of officiating is professionalism. Does a ref know what they're supposed to be doing and how they act on the field? Christian here was very professional, and he earned himself an A-, which was really, really good, and we're going to see reasons for that here. All right, now professionalism comes in a lot of ways. So it comes with things like, do the players respect you, or are you at least able to make the players respect you or the teams respect you? Does it are you able to keep control of the game, right? But it also comes with exhibiting that you know how to use the ref skills, right? Things like whistling, positioning, those sorts of things. In this case, we're going to take a look at an example of positioning during a fast break. Quaffle's turned over here. Keeper comes down the field. Now, the camera's going to pan with him quick, but Christian hasn't started running yet. He's hopping. Right, he's crow hopping, but he's not even in frame, right? When there's a fast break as a ref, you've got to run with the fast break. You've got to be moving with the fast break, keep up with the play. You don't have to be as fast as that player, right? If you're reffing like Max Maselli, Kissy Irwin, Augie Monroe, right, Jake Archibald, you're not going to keep up with them. But you want to keep up as much as you can with them. Now here we're going to see the exact opposite, where Christian fixes his positioning, and it now actually does run with the fast break. We're going to see that here. So the quaffle scrum is over here. This chaser picks it up from Rutgers. Chaser takes off, and you can see Christian is running with the fast break. Now again, he doesn't need to keep up, neck and neck with the fast break. Not his job. But he is keeping up. One thing I do want to point out is the AR here, who I think is Alex Leach, is not watching this fast break at all. Is entirely watching the bludger play we just saw on camera. Excellent work by that AR to not get pulled off to the quaffle game, even though the quaffle game is super exciting. Christian does an excellent thing here where he stops just outside the keeper zone line. I, as a ref, try not to go beyond the keeper zone line, especially in the box, which is from hoop to hoop. And then the keeper's line and the goal line, that's the kind of the box where a lot of contact's going to happen, a lot of driving's going to happen, or a lot of drive and dish is going to happen. And you, as a ref, don't need to clog that any more than it already will be clogged, especially if the defense is running a 2-2 zone. That is going to be a clogged area. That is going to have a lot of traffic in it. You want to stay out of that. Christian does an excellent thing here by staying out of that area.
Bags, missed tackle, and then
he also kept up with the fast break, which is good, right? As a ref, you can analyze your play and reflect, or your officiating, and reflect on your officiating as the game goes on and make those adjustments accordingly. You can do that as a referee. So this is excellent by Christian to adjust something that he has fixed, or adjust something that needed to be fixed throughout the game. All right, and the last thing on positioning here is going to come here on brooms up. So you can see the quaffle is all the way out here. Now Christian has positioned himself with his back to the camera, which that's fine. You're a ref. You can position yourself however you want relative to the camera. I always position myself facing the camera, mostly to avoid what I have heard from many photographers called ref butt. You can ask like AJ Abbey, Jeanette High, Ali Marcus, Jenna Bullweg. I'm sure they have hundreds of pictures of ref butts from brooms up calls and all sorts of things, because us refs have a real knack for getting in the way of their job, of what they're trying to do. And as a ref, you can't really take that into account too much, but you should take it into account somewhat, especially on a time like brooms up when you really have the time to think about it. When the quaffle is somewhere, is in one of these two positions, as a referee, you should stand in the middle of the field, orange cone or so, right? And if you are a referee, you can stand in the orange cone or between the quaffle and the bludger over here, right? You really don't want to be this far away. And because Christian and the camera have about the same angle at this point, I'm going to let brooms up happen, and you can try and watch the quaffle. Try and watch the brooms up on the quaffle.
Ooh, drama. No, I love to put a shot. Wait, is the camera going?
Yes.
Oh, it can hear us.
Rutgers, are you ready? I don't think Alvin's going. Oh, is he?
I don't know.
Okay, try and watch the quaffle.
That was bad.
And I don't know about you, but I couldn't see a single thing, right? So that's why you want to be as close as possible to that quaffle, right? And then there was maybe a charge on these beaters on the contested bludger, maybe not, but that's really for your ARs to decide more than it is you to decide. It's kind of hard to see because Christian gets in the way, and that's kind of his job as the ref, is to watch stuff. So I don't have a problem with him being in the way of the camera. But I do have a problem with him not being closer to the quaffle. That's where he should be on the positioning. Okay. Last but not least is rules knowledge, is knowledge and understanding of the rules and how they are applied and how they are enforced. And in this case, Christian earned himself a D-. This was not great. There were a lot of examples of the rules being misapplied. So we're going to see some examples of that here. Now, when it comes to rulebook knowledge, among the hardest calls refs have to make are contact from behinds and resets. Resets, especially when the new reset rule was first rolled out, it was very complicated and confusing to the people who had to adapt from the old rulebook. And so we're going to see an example of a reset that is used but isn't called. The Dragons have the quaffle. It's Alvin Arnold here has it. So he gets threatened by the Rutgers player, and the quaffle, it's hard to tell, but I think it gets knocked out by the Rutgers player. Alvin now gets possession again. Pushes off. And despite not getting touched, he gets touched, but he doesn't get pushed back, retreats back across the line because of beater pressure. Okay? And then he just kind of sits back here for a bit,
High pressure.
runs up, faces this chaser, and just kind of stops, right? So even if you, for some reason, thought in your head that beater pressure is an acceptable reason to go back across the midfield line, he's still hanging out in the backfield. Once you've crossed midfield, you have to quickly get back across. You can't just hang out, right? Just because you legally crossed the line going backwards doesn't mean you can just hang out back there, right? You have to get back across quickly. So here, he's not getting back across quickly, and no reset is called. Now, Christian does get bailed out here pretty quickly by the fact that the quaffle is going to get turned over thanks to a great play by a beater on Rutgers who's going to force Alvin to drop the quaffle and force Alvin to turn it over. Now, while in the last clip we saw a reset that was used but wasn't called, here we're going to see a reset called that wasn't used.
Comment on the beater
No,
stuff.
I haven't been watching.
So Rutgers has the quaffle,
I mean,
and the Rutgers player just throws it back to no one. Now, rule of thumb, throw it to no one, that's a reset. But there's a key element to the rule.
Dante is doing his thing.
So the whistle's blown here before anyone's picked it up, and before it's crossed the keeper's line, which was the pile of cones right about here. According to the rulebook, it's not a reset until the ball crosses a restrictor line. So just because this player threw it to no one doesn't mean that it's an illegal reset at this point. It's not an illegal reset until it crosses the cone line. And even then, all of these chasers are right on top of it. So even if it crossed, you could argue that when it arrived to the keeper's zone line, there were 3 people there ready to pick it up. So you might have the reset, but it's not an illegal reset. But this is called as a reset, despite the quaffle not crossing the keeper's zone line.
Very low.
And then the quaffle is going to get turned over to the Dragons player who fell on it. You do have to stop play for a reset unless you're calling no harm, no foul. So that's what's going on here. He's going to stop playing. He's going to turn it over. But here, the reset wasn't used quite yet. It still had to roll. It had just a little bit farther to roll along the pitch before that reset could be called. So here we're going to see an interesting consequence of delayed penalties that in the quaffle game. So here, Alvin has just been beat. He's just lost the quaffle, and the Rutgers player is going to pick the quaffle up.
But he gets beat out. Great
So he
job.
picks the quaffle up and starts running with it down the field on a fast break. Pitches it over. Honestly, sick block by Alvin there. Alvin blocks it.
Oh, what a block!
Alvin picks it up, and Christian's blowing the play dead. One thing Christian's done now a couple of times is when he's blowing the play dead, he holds his hand straight out. Again, this means warning. This means that I'm stopping play for a foul. This means I'm giving a warning out. Warning, language. Warning, legal contact, right? Warning, something along those lines. So hand up when you're stopping play, hand out when you're giving a warning. Okay, so Alvin blocks the quaffle and picks it up here on the ground. He's on the ground, so it's likely that he would pick it up and either set up the offense, or if he feels a slight advantage, like he can get past this chaser and this chaser won't catch up, he could go for the fast break. But given how much trouble that this chaser's been causing him, I imagine he would set up his offense at this point. But now a stoppage occurs, and I'm skipping forward. But what Christian's calling is that the Rutgers player stepped out of bounds on the sideline. Now, if that was called dead right when they stopped there, that would be the right call. Now, I think this is the AR who saw it and therefore called the delayed penalty. Now, the issue here is that by the time this foul was called, it's now no harm, no foul. Right? If you called it right when it happened, correct. It should be turned over at that spot. But now, all that's happening is instead of Alvin just starting the offense from here, now the Dragons have to inbound the ball and then start their offense, right? And the issue with that is they're now much closer to the Rutgers beaters, right? They're inbounding it from here. There's a Rutgers beater here, right? It's a lot more difficult to start your offense from here. So in reality, I think this has to be called no harm, no foul because it was a delayed penalty. If the AR comes up to me and tells me about this, I would say, thank you for letting me know, but now it's no harm, no foul. Rutgers didn't score and the Dragons have the quaffle. It's no harm, no foul at this point. I'm going to leave it where it is. We're gonna get started. And then I'd say no harm, no call on the play, remount. Right? This is by rule correct, but I would call no harm, no foul here. Partially in the terms of we need to get the game going, but also in the fact that you don't really need to put the quaffle over here, right? The only difference is now a different Dragons player has it, who is in a slightly worse position because this beater can close that distance. That's about it. Now, after watching the whole game, I have some general, more qualitative feedback. The first are the pluses, the things that went really well. First was those whistles and voice volume were excellent. You were able to hear his whistles, and anytime he was facing the camera, you were able to hear him. But you still have to use those hand signals because that wind and there's no wall on the other side. so there's no echo, so it's really hard to hear. So you want to use more visual cues here. Another plus was that no captains came on the field to sway calls, right? I didn't see on the camera any evidence that the captains were on the field trying to sway Christian, and that was really, really good. Last but not least was that Christian had really good control of the game. The game started off with quite a few cards, and then the control was kept through most of regulation. And then really the only time it started to slip away was, overtime and double overtime, when the team started to get more and more hype. And it is a lot harder to control the game there. But in regulation, Christian's control of the game was good, and it got stronger as the game went on. Now, in terms of deltas, which are things to change, the first one was that there were a lot of long stoppages with no explanations. The commentators didn't know what was going on, and I didn't know what was going on. And people should be able to, from the live stream or just from being on the sideline, know what's going on. Another delta here is a lack of rules knowledge. There were several instances where the rules were applied incorrectly. Not a poor judgment calls, but direct incorrect applications of the rules. And last was poor positioning. So Christian a lot of times had what I call lead feet or concrete shoes, where he didn't move very much, didn't get himself off the center point or too far off the center point. Now, the RX, the prescription for fixing these. With a long stoppage, you need to take control of the ref meetings to increase the efficiency. As the head ref, you take control of that meeting, you get what you need to know, and you move on. As the head referee, you really only need to know for most fouls 3 things, which are the jersey number of the person that did it, the team that they're on, and the foul they committed. That's pretty much it. You might occasionally need to know whether it happened right before or after a goal, or if it's a blue card, whether it affects the quaffle game. That's pretty much all you need to know as the head referee. So those meetings can happen real quick. The lack of rules knowledge. Reading the rule book is a good place to start, but that's not always help. The next would be to reflect on your own calls. So after a game, you can have discussions with the captains or with other officials in the group or other officials that were watching and discuss calls you made, what people agree or disagree with. You can also review film. So you can look at film of your own games, but that's kind of really hard to do. It is a lot easier to watch other referees. So I would review film of other referees and watch what they call, why they call it, and how they call it. And last but not least, for positioning, you need to move, follow the game. The first step is just getting used to going keepers online to keepers online, right? Being able to go that far. Once you've mastered going keepers zone to keepers online, or once you at least feel comfortable with it, you don't have to master it, but once you feel comfortable with it, start moving sideline to sideline as the head ref. And then once you feel comfortable with that, you can kind of start going goal line to goal line and sideline to sideline as play moves. But as a ref, you can't really just stay stationary in the center of the field. You have to be moving around the field. Otherwise, you won't be able to get good angles on the calls that need to be made. Now, weighting all of these scores together to come up with a final score is a little bit difficult. They're not all weighted the same, and some of them are at different levels. But overall, Christian earned himself a C+ here. While its consistency was good, it was too lax. It started out lax at the start and then got stricter as the game went on. The communication was okay. It was passable, but there were no hand signals. And hand signals are incredibly important, or oftentimes the wrong hand signal was used. Christian's professionalism was A grade, which is fantastic, but that rules knowledge really sunk the score overall. C+ is a passable grade here. Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe, and please leave a comment if you have any questions about the analysis or the game you just watched. Stick around for a bonus call where there was a potential red card, but unfortunately, the film cuts out before I can know whether the card was given. But you can see what a red card looks like. All right, now this last call is made, and one thing I want to talk about before I show it is that the camera cuts out shortly after play is stopped. So I don't know why play is stopped. And I don't really know what foul is called, if any. So this is nothing about Christian. This is really just me a little bit on my soapbox. So the quaffle gets scored by the Dragons, and this is in overtime. And so the Rutgers is trying to score here, and I think they're near the end of the 5 minutes. There's no graphics that tell me anything. But I think they're at the end of the 5 minutes. So Rutgers is on a fast break, really against the clock to try and score here. And the Dragons are under a lot of pressure to not let them score, because if they score, I think they tie it and they go into double overtime.
You have to stop play.
So this Rutgers player is charging down the field, right? So you can see him here. He's charging down the field. This player for the Dragons is very much so not on broom, right? You can see the broom is nowhere near his legs. You can see it straight up and down right there. The keeper also off broom, right? Those are the only two Dragons players back there. I want you to watch what this player does next.
Make that throw.
Ooh! Oh, what a tackle!
Now Christian stops play. Christian again does this thing where he puts his arm up and then he puts his arm out. Like, no, just keep your arm up, Christian. But what happens here, what looks like blood boil, is this player. I know which player this is, and I'm not gonna say, but this player is off broom. This player's been playing a while. Player's off broom, nowhere near the hoops, remounts, and then remounts in the middle of the field, is dismounted, remounts in the middle of the field, and then makes the tackle to stop. In my eyes, this is a red card. This is egregious foul play and intentionally illegally denying a scoring opportunity at this point. It's a red card. It's a straight red card foul. Now this keeper, I'm gonna let the play run for a little bit because I'm gonna show you that the camera cuts out. But this keeper is furious and he has every right to be. I am furious. This keeper has every right to be furious. I'm not even a player in this game, and I'm not even the one who was tackled by this. Right? This is an egregious foul play and should be a straight red card for that defender. Easily a straight red card for that defender.
Oh, no? What?
So the keeper is very, very angry, and I'm just going to let it run so you can see it skip.
I'll allow it.
Right.
Right,
Yeah.
so it just skips. So I don't know what the foul was. There were about, I think, 4 different calls that a ref could make here. So there's the red card for illegally, intentionally denying a scoring opportunity. I think you have an okay case for making that call, and I would back up a ref who made that call in this case. I think you have a stronger call. The strongest call is egregious foul play, right? That player is intentionally and obviously breaking the rules to gain a significant advantage to prevent a goal, right? That's what happens here. And so in that case, this should be a straight red card for egregious foul play. If for some reason you weren't super comfortable giving that straight red card, there's still the yellow card for playing while dismounted or for violating the knockout procedure and then making contact with someone. That yellow card would be the least and also still not, I believe, the right call here. And then there's a no call. You could just be like, no call, right? And in that case, that's the wrongest call to make here. But the most correct call here is the straight red for egregious foul play. Like, that's just an inexcusable action by that player, in all honesty. And as the ref, you have to take note of those things and you have to make those calls. I know they're tough calls, especially in overtime in the last couple seconds. That's a rough call to have to make, but sometimes it's the call you have to make.